Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Moskowitz from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing. Administrator Criswell, good to be with you. As the only member in Congress who's run a disaster response, run a disaster recovery, handed out billions of dollars of FEMA money, also a Democrat who worked in a Republican administration and ran the recovery efforts for Hurricane Michael in deeply Republican areas of the Panhandle, I can tell you not once did I ever think about their politics or my politics. As I toured the Panhandle in Neil Dunn's district or Matt Gaetz's district, I looked at people as Americans who were hit by a disaster. And my job was to get them every program that FEMA had, every dollar available to them. That was my job. What happened in Florida in this instance is deeply disturbing. It's unacceptable. I know you know that. Disaster aid should never be declined based on support of any political candidate. And I'm happy this rogue employee was fired. You did the right thing immediately, right? What should have happened here is if there were members of FEMA's team that felt uncomfortable, that should have been passed up to the FCO. That should have gone to the federal coordinating officer. And then that information should have gone to Director Guthrie, who's the Director of Emergency Management in the state of Florida, my former deputy. And then they could have made sure to identify those homes and gotten them the information. But that's not what happened. There was a clear breakdown here. And so you should do an investigation to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. Every emergency manager in the country during COVID, yourself included, I'm sure, was worried about the politics of disaster aid changing. We saw it happening in real time. And we were really worried, about how that would go into future disasters. As the world is becoming more partisan, the world is becoming more divided. You're seeing it here in the country. We were hoping that disasters there'd be a force field around FEMA. But that's not the case. I know the people at FEMA are exhausted, okay? Talent is retiring. They have a rotating door because of the burnout rate from disasters. That's not just in this administration. I talked to the previous two administrators during Donald Trump's administration, and it was the same problem because of all the disasters that are happening and the burnout rate that exists. My own agency lost 200 people after COVID because they were burned out. Every problem that my colleagues brought up, and they're right. Chairwoman Fox is right. Anna Paulina Luna is right. All of the problems that they brought up with FEMA, those issues about programs and being denied, this is not new. This has been going on for a while. It happened in the Trump administration, right? Because here's one of the things that I'm going to say that no FEMA administrator will tell you while they're FEMA administrator. But the last two Trump administrators will tell you, previous administrators will tell you when they leave the job, is that Homeland has become too big. It has become too big. I got to work with Joe Lieberman. The idea of Homeland was a great idea. It's still a good idea. But never did anyone envision that the bureaucracy would become too big. FEMA can't make the changes you want them to make, whether it's Ms. Criswell or the next administrator that Trump appoints. They can't. Homeland won't let them because there's 30 people around a table, right, trying to figure out what to do in the agency. So for the people at DOGE, if Vivek and Elon are listening, you need to look at Homeland. You got problems at Secret Service, guess where that is? Homeland. And so what I'm saying is that don't look at Administrator Criswell or this FEMA administration or in this Biden administration. If you think there are issues in FEMA that you want to fix, I'm letting you know these issues go back decades. They're not new. They're not. And so I do want to say one more thing because I think it's tremendously important for my colleagues across the aisle and my Democratic colleagues. It is so important that we don't allow FEMA to become politicized and that we don't allow disaster aid to become politicized. Laser beams do not start fires in California. We cannot guide where hurricanes go. And you know what? You know who's amplifying that stuff? Foreign accounts. Other countries are amplifying that stuff on social media to divide us, to divide Democrats and Republicans. They want us fighting over disaster aid because it helps their goal. We can't participate in that. We shouldn't amplify that. So, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for having this hearing. We should have this hearing. But I want you to know that these issues that you're bringing up are not issues of today. These are issues of yesteryear. And so I will work with anyone across the aisle on fixing these issues within Homeland. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Mr.